Hello there, YouTube. This Thoughts from No One in Particular has been brewing for a couple of weeks, but I haven't had the time to use the camera, so it's had to go away. And the funny thing is, the story that started it has only got more ridiculous as it went along. I am, of course, talking about the upcoming London Olympics. The London Olympics, yes. Back in 2005, the day before the 7/7 terrorist attacks, in fact, I mentioned before about the fact that it's typical of the British sense of humour that people coming out of the tube tunnels after 7/7 were saying bloody French can't take losing the Olympics to us. Because it was, I don't know why, but it was something of a triumph for London to actually be selected. To be the underdog and then be selected, I think, was more a thing than actually being selected. But then, of course, we had the financial crash, and for some reason, it's still on. And it's still costing us, the British taxpayer, billions. It has cost us, according to the Independent, who did a headline on this actually, it was a front page headline, they said 72 billion in taxpayer pounds, not dollars, 72 billion in taxpayer pounds spent on what is essentially, they called it an advertising event for the most evil corporations on the planet. And I happen to agree with them, because these particular nasty corporations, they include so many of the old-fashioned ones that get vilified unjustly to an extent. Some of them do get vilified justly. I believe the Cokes are involved heavily. And then we also have companies from Britain who are being given contracts by the government for things like benefit reform, things like that. One in particular is called Atos. Atos is a company that is being tasked with assessing people for disability benefit. They have been proven time and again to be woefully corrupt and profit-driven, and just generally exactly what you do not want in disability assessment. There was a case where a lady who was dying of terminal cancer could barely move very far. Took her enough effort just to stagger out of the door, be taken to she couldn't drive herself, to the assessment centre and sit with the assessor. That assessor then declared her fit for work. Yes, it is that sick. And I do believe there is action being taken by several disability activist groups where they're getting a big bunch of people in wheelchairs to sit in front of the Olympic torch. That should be headline grabbing. Also, other signs of disenchantment with this theft of our tax money include the rail workers and public transport unions threatening a strike during the Olympics. Normally I have a lot of problems with Bob Crow and his crew, because they are very notorious for calling strikes for stupid reasons. But please, Bob, if you ever run into this, please do go ahead with this strike. Do show the government the contempt that the British people have for this white elephant, this even bigger white elephant than the royal wedding. I believe I talked about that before, but this is an even more massive one because it's actually getting lots of taxpayer money into it. It's not the royals paying for it themselves, except the security bill, which was ridiculous, but because they're non-entities. But that's another argument. But yeah, this the fight back is beginning. There is a lot of antipathy towards the Olympics, despite the fact that you have some people who, admittedly, it's their job to be excited, like Gabby Roslin, the sports commentator, appeared on a panel show reboot of Room 101 and tried to get Olympic apathy. The point of Room 101 is you put things in that you hate, and she tried to get Olympic apathy put in and failed completely because of the fact that there was pretty much nobody in the audience on her side. Frank Skinner himself was very apathetical towards it. I mean, to be fair, Frank Skinner is a massive football fan. He doesn't really give a monkeys about the other sports, but he will call out bullshit when he sees it. He's been calling out FIFA and their obvious corruption for ages, and he's been calling out people like Wayne Rooney. This was a classic. Wayne Rooney was, when we booed off the England team after a particularly poor match, Wayne Rooney said, "Oh, thanks for the loyalty," and he turned around and says, "This man who screwed over his club for money, who cheated on his own wife with geriatric prostitutes, can turn round to the England fan who has been struggling for something like 45, 50 years waiting for a good result, and he can talk to us about loyalty? Fuck it." Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. The point is that this horrible event, nothing good can come out of it. As I said, we have several big companies essentially using it as a advertising event, including Atos, including several other corporations. I'm sure my far more left-wing friends will find objectionable. But I find it objectionable because it's taxpayer money being used for their advertising campaign. Also, some of the stupid things, this came out the week after the Independence headline. A law was rushed through Parliament that increased copyright protection for the Olympic logo, that you couldn't show the Olympic logo without express permission of Parliament, blah, blah, blah. So yes, even Have I Got News For You had to blur out the Olympic rings. To which one of the guests turned around and said, "Is that because rings are considered pornographic in some countries?" But yes, it's going to also a poor small businessman. I feel so much sympathy for him. Had to change his business. He runs a cafe called the Olympic Cafe in southeast London, I believe, and he was told by the High Court to change his name so he wouldn't, because he wasn't associated with the Olympics. Now, he worked out it would have cost him £5,000, which is a lot of money to a small business, £5,000 to rename his shop. So he went for the cheap solution and just painted the O out, which covered his arse legally, and everyone still calls it the Olympic Cafe. It's not like everyone's now calling it the Olympic Cafe by law. But again, that is stupid beyond words, and essentially I was really glad when Russia predictably got the World Cup, because that would have been another massive drain in our public budget. I don't particularly care that it was corrupt, very obviously corrupt, or Qatar either. Qatar was rather funny because nobody had actually ever heard of them, but the fact that they had massive amount of money obviously had no influence whatsoever on FIFA. And the fact that their whole population could fit into, fit into the stadiums they were building. So they're building 4 proper-sized stadiums, and they could fit their whole population of their country into those 4 stadiums. Yeah, somebody's made a real bugger with that one. And that should be really interesting to watch. And as I think I mentioned before, Peter Tatchell, because they have laws against homosexuality where it's 5 years in prison and possibly flogging involved if you're found to have... He's been trying to out international footballer just so he could make a martyr of him, which is very ballsy, or maybe probably be more ballsy if he went over there himself. But he probably will, knowing him, because he's done far more ballsy things in his past. He went to Russia and stood with them, got himself arrested in Russia, and I've got all kinds of respect for him. But I keep getting sidetracked. Anyway, my point is, how can we justify £72 billion, which is roughly equivalent to what the national debt is? Also, it's roughly equivalent to what Amazon.co.uk owes us in taxes, if they were paying their taxes honestly. So that's a funny thing. Our national debt could actually be wiped out if Amazon.co.uk, just Amazon, paid their taxes. It is really silly. But obviously, all three parties are owned by big money. So even the supposedly socialist Labour Party is owned by big money. Not only big money, but aristocratic. We have the thing with aristocratic dynasties as well. Although not all of them started aristocratic, but they've all become aristocratic eventually. I believe David Cameron is the closest related Prime Minister to the royal family in history. I am not entirely sure. Yes, probably right, because normally, even back in the medieval era, we would pick somebody relatively working class to fulfil the sort of what was called Lord Chancellor then role. But he's ridiculously close. In fact, I think he's actually in the order of succession somewhere around 200, 300, but he's still in there, which is just stupid. So yeah, my usual drivel about not so much tax the rich as abolish the rich, but that's a subject for another video. And yeah, I really don't agree with this the Olympics stealing taxpayer money, which has already been taken from key services, disability support, mental health support, which is very useful in a time of recession, because what other time needs mental health support more than a time of recession? Come on, think about it, because so much of our culture and our existence is driven by money, and it shouldn't be, but it is, because of the realities of the world. So much of it is driven by money that the loss of it can be devastating, and people stuck in... I know there are actually private counsellors now who specialise in just debt counsel. And they're not particularly financially savvy or anything, they just specialise in psychological support for people in debt. That's how bad things are getting. And the loan sharks probably are doing a roaring trade, which is not a good sign. So really, we shouldn't be spending all this money on the Olympics. It should have been cancelled back in the crash. I had no love for Gordon Brown, although I had a modicum of respect for him. I have a feeling that as soon as the crash happened, he would probably have been, "Look, Tony, we can't afford this games. We got to cancel the thing. We got to, or we at least got to drain the budget back, or something like that." And Blair would probably have strong-armed him. The rest of the party would have strong-armed him. And that's just me speculating. I don't know for certain, because obviously in public he had to be very supportive of the games. And of course we also have Boris, the re-elected mayor, with his ridiculously stereotypical manner, and he's now going to be heavily involved in the games, just as he was picking up that flag from the Chinese and making a rather insensitive speech about whiff-waff, which which is table tennis or ping pong. Well, he said the Chinese call it ping pong, which is not true. That's the rather insensitive pronunciation that British colonials used. So, yes, this should be interesting. We have what is basically a 19th century colonial governor as our representative for the Olympics, which is going to be quite funny. And as I said, I can't wait to see this disability activist group stick their wheelchairs in front of things. And mate, please, Bob Crow, I've never asked you to strike before, but strike during the fucking Olympics, please. Anyhow, I would encourage anyone who is British or has British friends to pummel your opposition to the Olympics and their colossal waste of our money, which should be going to helping our people and helping out with it. That's the thing. I am a massive opponent of defence spending, pointless wars, overseas aid budget, which is getting ridiculous, and I believe that we should be spending our money on keeping these key services alive and keeping them going, because we have the NHS is way above the US mess of a healthcare system, even though it's one of the worst socialised healthcare systems in the world. Somewhere below Jamaica, I believe, was the last rating. We're in 28 or something, I can't remember. Compared to the US, it's 37, though. It's bloody brilliant. And as I've said before, I wouldn't be alive without it. So, yeah, that's my opinion on the big white elephant, the latest white elephant. I shall keep you informed as to when the next one comes along.